think truly understanding what's driving the success and the failures would be something I'd ingrain in my previous self. I was seeing the success, but I didn't truly know why. So if I could have seen it in a lens like MEDDIC, like the speed I could have scaled that, not only for myself but for my peers and my team, would have been incredible.
Hey everyone, this is Pim with another episode of Elite Dealers. And today my next guest is Adam Clarke. He's a global senior director at Oyster. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pim. Yeah, happy to be here.
Hey, so to set the agenda for today, we're going to talk about a number of things, right? Because you, with your company, have embarked on this MEDDIC journey. We're proud to say that we're a partner in that. We get to play a role in it. But we're going to reflect on some of your learnings over the past 10 years, right? A deal that you've done 10 years ago where you weren't necessarily selling with MEDDIC, but you can now retrospectively see how it would underpin professional selling. So that's a deal that you won, a deal that you lost as well, and some learnings of the initiative that you are running today, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we start with going back in time, say 10 years ago, and talk a little bit about some of the insights that you now have reflecting on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, I've only been officially trained on MEDDIC, right, in the last six months or so. So when I reflect back on some of the deals that I worked and won when I was selling, it's interesting using that MEDDIC lens to understand why I was winning or losing retrospectively. The deal I've got in mind, it's company, a global research and consulting organization, and I worked with this company for about 5 years. Started off with a small deal, about 20k ARR, and after 5 years, it was about 400k ARR. And my reflection on it at the time, not knowing MEDDIC, I used to think I had a great relationship with them. Like that's what I put the success down to, was I built a great relationship, I networked well, and created trust, and that helped grow the account. Really, that was about as deep as my understanding of the methodology and the qualification got of that account. And as I look back with a MEDDIC lens on it, what I realized that I had was a champion in that company. So the individual that I worked with, we had a relationship. We would text each other, we'd call each other. She would sell for me internally. She'd proactively introduce me to new individuals that had started. We would problem solve things together outside of the remit of what my company's solution was. And as I reflect on this, the word that springs to mind is she gave me access. Like access and introductions to everybody that I needed to grow that business. So I had access to the economic buyer. I didn't know what an economic buyer was, right? Back then it was the person that just put their pen on paper. But actually being able to meet that economic buyer changed the game for me. She had introduced me to 12 people in total when I look back. And having that champion made everything else work, right? Understanding what was the decision-making criteria, what was the process, what metrics were we using to evaluate success. And I remember actually in one session, when I think about the metrics, she had all of the metrics that we were producing for them, and what all the competition were doing as well. So that visibility, in order to help co-create the action plan and the mutual action plan, was something that we did together. And at the time, I didn't have any framework or understanding of why this was working. And I think consequently, just reflecting on it now, we didn't really have a way of scaling that success. Like, this was our most successful client, and my understanding was like, hey, I had a good relationship with them, build a good relationship. And that would have been my advice to other people. But being able to like slot it into a framework and understand why it was successful, it fits into the MEDDIC framework that I've now been open to.
It's such a good example, Adam. And I will go back to something that you'll hear us say often, which is like no champion, no deal, right? And in this example, and I think it extends to a question as well for anyone who tunes into this. Like if you think about some of your best deals, even if you didn't sell with MEDDIC at the time, like you will typically find that there was this person in that deal for you, right? That is your champion, reflecting back on it. Like every single of the examples that people typically tend to come up with, they are able to see like, hey, I did have a champion there indeed. And then as a next thing, we'd say like, hey, no champion, no deal, unless a customer figures out what they need to solve for, does it do a great job at professional buying, which typically doesn't, end up being the case. But if you are successful that way, you're just like an order taker, right? So if you think about professional selling, finding someone who can be your potential champion and build them up, which is effectively what you did without necessarily using this as a framework, as a methodology, is definitely, a great example of using MEDDIC retroactively.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that I think is very interesting that you already touched upon is like the scalability of it. Because once you figure this out, you can start to see how it becomes repeatable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it works both ways. Like having the champion gives you the confidence that you can scale. And the other way around, I've had it, we have it, everybody's had it where you think you have a champion for some reason, but you don't. Maybe you haven't tested them, you've got happy ears, you assume somebody is your champion and you work on a deal, you invest time, you invest your organization's resources in it. And for some reason, at the end of the deal or the end of the cycle, it close loses. And you look back and you realize this person wasn't a champion. They weren't selling for me internally. They didn't give me access. I made assumptions because the champion, or what I thought was a champion, was telling me things. And we had it, like we had it in our organization at the end of last year, where we had this deal, we had a ton of resources invested, and it's not just sales time, it's all of our cross-functional stakeholders that are investing time in it as well. And it crumbled at the end because what the champion had been telling us, what our assumed champion had been telling us, was not true. And that, like, I actually love that, because the lesson that we all learned from that was the importance of champions. And it's built into everything we do now. It's part of our onboarding, it's part of our interviewing, it's part of our deal reviews. And I actually love those failures where you can pinpoint the exact criteria where you're like, I missed this and I know why. And you can use it, you can learn from it, you can scale it. So it's really interesting talking about those wins and the losses, and having a framework where you can identify the reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you gave a couple of examples of the champion that you had in this deal 10 years ago, right? About coaching you on how to win, introducing you to new stakeholders, basically really being your partner on the other side, right? And coming through as a champion. And then some examples of someone who wasn't. But what I think is an interesting thing to talk about a little bit here is that in the beginning, you said that this partnership with this customer evolved across multiple years. So it went from 20K to, a 10, 20X of that size, right? So was the champion persona and the individual, the main champion, I should say, did they remain the same individual throughout the lifespan of your engagement there, or were there changes along the way?
They did. They remained there, and they became a stronger and stronger champion with exponential value for the longer that we had that relationship. And actually, I guess like a question for you, because it feels like when I reflect back on it, I had maybe more than one champion there by the end. I had multiple individuals that were giving me access, had power and authority. Like how in terms of MEDDIC, how do you look at multiple champions? Is that something that's part of the framework, or should people just be looking for one person as their key champion?
Yeah, well, I think both of those statements and questions are true. Like, you don't think about champions as something singular. So it's definitely something that should be considered as looking for plural champions, like multiple champions across your deal, right? And the more complex a deal gets and the bigger the organizations, the more champions that you would look for. But you do typically have that one main champion, right? And I always think about the days when I used to be buddied up with an SE. We would always make sure that we identified a technical champion as well. So this would be secondary on the customer side, and we would have a multi-thread going. So in the case of, our primary champion leaving or being on leave for a limited period of time, or even going dark for like a few days, you would always have like a multi-thread open line of communication somewhere that you could rely on, right? So when you start building multiple champions, you can do a better job at triangulation, make sure that you're aligning with value and stakeholders and process better. And so it will definitely pay off. So yes, best practice is to think about it in a multiple form with one main champion as your key persona to work with.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And like we often talk now about the brittle nature of just having that one strong champion and trying to create additional champions. So it's good. That's really useful.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with your deal here is that person stayed with the business throughout, right? But people change companies and roles all the time. So if you've been doing a great job at building a singular champion, and your sales cycle takes you, let's say, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it may be, right? And then somewhere along the lines, they change roles, and therefore the pain that you've identified, implicated with that champion is no longer relevant to them. It's like you and a new person comes in, like things change, right? And you're suddenly open to all this risk that wasn't there before. So being proactive about this and covering like multiple bases from a champion perspective is never a bad idea.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hey, and so in terms of like other elements, reflecting back on that initial deal, is there anything else besides champion that really stands out to you?
I think the champion for me is the foundation of everything else. So it opened up the right information for the other elements of MEDDIC. So I was always clear on what the decision-making criteria was, always had access to the economic buyer. The decision-making process was always clear. I knew the strengths and weaknesses of our competition. And I think having the confidence in all of those criteria enabled me to be confident in my forecasting, in my understanding of what I was going to deliver for that month or for that quarter. And like those things are important as a sales rep. Like the numbers are important. Your ability to forecast, qualify effectively, give confidence and linearity to your RevOps team and your sales team and the leadership team in an organization are important. And like for me, that deal and success in that deal was a springboard for my career and ultimately helped me gain promotion and elevated and expedited my career trajectory. So it's interesting just thinking back on it now, like the importance of getting something right like that, the impact that it can have on your future career.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I agree. Like it's a foundation, right? It opens up the insight into all of the other elements. And so I often think about it. It's like if you would ask the question, like, what is your favorite element? A year ago, I might have said champion. Now I would probably say decision criteria, because that's where you make like the big difference, right? That's where you win. Essentially, that's where you arm yourself against the competition, not just rivals, but any other thing that competes for the same resources from your customer, essentially. But it's so true. It's like as soon as you do find a person that is attached to the identified pain and you can start building them up, then if you keep at it, if you keep on executing your process, then the rest of the elements will build up and you will be in a better position for it, right? So I resonate with that. And so on the flip side of this great example that I think will stay with you for the rest of your career, there was also an example where you lost a deal, and there's a story there too, right? Can we get into that?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the deals that we worked at Oyster, the company that I now work with, at the end of last year, we invested a huge amount of time, resource, and effort into an opportunity. And it was 3 or 4 months, maybe longer actually, in the making, which is longer than our typical sales cycle. And at the end, the deal crumbled. The opportunity went away. We didn't even really get a validated answer on the reason that we lost the deal. It kind of dissipated. We lost momentum and couldn't build it back. And when we had a deal review and looked through it and evaluated the MEDDIC criteria, which we weren't using at the time because we didn't have MEDDIC, ultimately what it came down to was we thought we had a champion, but we didn't. We believed what the champion was saying. We didn't validate what they were saying. We didn't test what they were saying. And we made assumptions, and we based our business case, we based our action plans, and we based all the resource that we put into it from assumptions. And that cost us. Like, if I think about the pain that cost us, the hours of effort incorrectly forecasting the deal, it was a really painful loss. And what I love about this example is that we have actually now won this deal. We've won this company early this year. So a few months later, having analysed the reasons as to why we lost it, we were able to re-qualify the opportunity and create a champion that was able to introduce us to the economic buyer, actually have the conversation with the people that were signing off on the deal, and all of the other elements started to make more sense. We started to get different information than we were getting previously, and having lost it before, we were extra vigilant on testing and not assuming any information. And I love that. Like, anything that involves a learn that you can take and make a change and create a different result off the back of it is incredible. Like, that's for me as a sales leader, that's what I love to see, the ability to reflect, to analyze, to make changes and to improve what we're doing. And MEDDIC helped us to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. I think it's so interesting that you've used like a deal review to understand why you lost it in order to empower you and the team to turn it around and ultimately win it, right? They're like, everybody loves a comeback story, and this is a good example. Something specific in there is like deal reviews, and even MEDDIC to a degree are sometimes considered to be a bit after the fact, right? It's like a checklist that we cover all of our bases, and this can be for like for a deal won or a deal in progress or like a deal that you have lost, which I think is a good example and habit that more companies should do, because there are so many learnings in things that you lose as well, right? However, the deal reviews, you really want them to be proactive. So you want to run one with your team every single week, make sure that the mind share is there to infuse insights and value into ongoing cycles, right? So that you can get ahead of these things. And I think that if there's one thing that I would urge every sales leader to do as far as cadences go when they have a MEDDIC initiative going on and trying to get it to like a true second nature stage, like embed deal reviews into your cadences, because it will create this flywheel of further learning, right? It will create a common language that you're after, but it will also immediately create the opportunity for the team to collaborate and enhance the actual opportunity and therefore like your revenue output, right? My question to you would be like, if it went close lost somewhere end of last year and you got it back on track early this year, it's like, how did you go about the re-engagement? Like, what was the thing that made the now customer go like, yes, let's get back into this evaluation?
Yeah, good question. We lost momentum. So we really lost momentum into the latter end of last year, and it culminated with not getting access to the economic buyer. And I think if I think about what we did at the start of this year, it was revisiting the pain. Like, the pain was still there. So understanding and trying to implicate that pain with our contact, who we relabeled a contact and not a champion at that point, and started to revisit the pain and implicate that pain, because that hadn't gone away. It was just our ability as a company and as a sales team to implicate that pain in the right way and create that momentum. That's what we lacked. And ultimately, we started then building our contact into a champion and started to test the assumptions and the information that we were getting, and that started to give us more access to the wider organization and create that momentum.
Right. So the same contact did ultimately become a qualified champion, whereas they failed previously, right?
Yes. Yeah, they did. And I think when we're talking about it now, it shows the impact that you can have as a salesperson, like the difference that you can make in your sales process. You can make that impact. You have the power to create a champion. It's in the decisions, in the behaviors, in the activities that you make. And last year, when we tried to do that, and actually when we weren't using MEDDIC, we didn't understand fully what a champion was. We were unable to do that. And as we start to understand more about what a champion is and how to test them, you realize it's in your own ability as a sales professional to create the champion yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's worth kind of echoing that a champion just starts out as a contact, right? And then you build them up, they become a coach. It seems like they sort of got to that level the first time around in this deal, but then ultimately became a champion as well, because they won't be able to sell on your behalf if you don't build them up, right? And they won't do that either if you don't align to their vested interest, etc. So I think that there's a massive learning in that, and something that we can all take away from. Adam, now you are, as a senior director, working with your team and, with the broader business on this MEDDIC initiative, bringing it into the day-to-day of how the team works and engages with customers, right? It's like, in this still early stage initiatives, what are some of the key insights that you have gathered over the last couple of months?
So MEDDIC is ingrained in everything we do. And it's the bedrock of our sales methodology, our sales process, and our approach for this year. So if I think about all the important things that are in my life as a sales leader now, starting with our hiring profile, we've got headcount that we need to reach. I've worked with the TA team to reevaluate what our hiring profile looks like, and as part of opportunity progression is a part of what we term it. All of the questions in there are MEDDIC related. Do people have the ability and the skill to execute on bringing a deal from discovery and early stage all the way through to close one? And that's what we want to understand from new starters. So we're bringing in the right people. We're using MEDDIC to help onboard our reps in an understanding of this is how we do things at Oyster. We use MEDDIC. And then that is ingrained in our day-to-day and weekly operating rhythms. So in one-to-ones, we've talked about deal reviews. And actually, I will pause on deal reviews for one moment, because I think that's probably been the most transformative meeting since implementing MEDDIC. previously, when we ran deal reviews, we would talk about a deal with not a lot of structure. It could go any way, and the value that we were gaining from those deal reviews, in truth, was minimal. Now, there's a real structure to how we run deal reviews. We open up Gong, we look through all the MEDDIC fields that we've implemented in Gong, and we talk about what we know and what the actions are, not what we think or assume. And that environment's great because it's a universal language. Everybody knows what we're looking for across the spectrum of MEDDIC. And that's been transformational. Now we have reps putting their hand up on a Monday morning saying, please, can I bring this opportunity to a deal review, because they know there's value. They know there's value coming from that deal review. Whereas previously, honestly, it was a bit of a chore running deal reviews because nobody really saw what was the value that we're trying to get out of it. In addition to that, it's transformed how we forecast, qualifying in, qualifying out opportunities as well. I know that when I look at our sales pipeline, I can be confident in where the reps are placing their opportunities in a forecast sense as well. So it's really transformed everything from who we hire, why we hire them, how we onboard, how we upskill, and how we measure our sales pipeline as well.
Yeah, it's like using it as a lens for hiring as well. It's such a powerful thing, right? So I love hearing that. And I know that you have a little bit of maybe little bit is underplaying it, but you have a background in coaching as well, right? And something that you just shared around deal reviews and reps like fighting for the spot to be able to put in their deal, like that goes back to culture and creating an environment in where people feel trusted and can see the value of a session like that, right? From, having said that and the background of coaching, what is like your insight to creating a culture in which that is working? Because like you said before, a deal review can be a bit of a chore. It can feel scrutinizing for some of the reps, right? So what did you do to make this into what it is right now, where the penny has seemed to drop and people see the value of it?
Yeah. So I'm probably biased because I think Oyster, we've got a phenomenal culture. And by that, I don't just mean we want people to be happy. Of course we do. We want to create an environment where people can thrive and be successful. And I think what that means is creating an environment where you're setting expectations early on, that we have really high standards, and everybody that is a part of our sales team and sales process needs to continually develop themselves in order to meet really high standards, because we want to create a world-class sales team. And because we want to do that, we want to use world-class sales tools, and we want to use world-class sales processes and methodologies. So I think the first thing is setting the expectations that motivation and success isn't just about delivering numbers and revenue. It's about focusing on your personal growth and your development as well. And I'd often ask the question, if you picture yourself at the end of the year or in 6 or 12 months' time and you're looking back at your progression, what is it that you've done in those 6 months? What are the activities or behaviors that you've done that have led to your growth and your progression? And having a tool like MEDDIC is a scalable, structured process that we can relate to. And like, I truly feel like I'm still at my infancy in terms of my learning about MEDDIC. I love it, and I've read books on it, and I love the course is amazing, and we're implementing it. But I know there's still so much more that I can get from it, and that's what's exciting, is the potential of additional learning and development that you can get throughout the year. And getting everyone bought into that creates a motivated sales team of people that want to continually improve.
Oh yeah, I mean that is so true, right? It's everything but a one and done. Like, I've been selling with MEDDIC for quite a few years now, and as part of the role that I have here, like, I'm immersed in it every single day. But for not a single second do I have the feeling or the conviction that I'm done learning, right? It's like you constantly level up, but that goes back to like a mindset, because it empowers you to constantly innovate, right? It's like there's all these new ideas every single year and month that add value to what is already the most powerful common language for like the full go-to-market, right? So if you think about it from a initiative perspective with a team or with an entire company, it's all about getting 1% better every day. That pays off like massive dividends in the end towards the success that you will have from a commercial perspective and the value that you will deliver for your customers. One thing that you said there, for me, it reminded me of the AWS way of working or the Amazon way of working. I think I should say the Amazonian way of working, which is working backwards, right? It's kind of you envision where you are in 6 months or a year from now, and then you build an actionable plan towards that. I think that is something that we could all do a better job at in sales and in all GTM roles effectively, so that you have a vision, and then MEDDIC can underpin like your path towards achieving your vision, right? So I really love that you called that out. I think in summary, we've definitely touched upon some very heavy hitting topics here. It's like the no champion, no deal philosophy, right? It's the importance of deal reviews and having a common language so that everybody can understand like, hey, these are our gaps and action items to influence the level of success. MEDDIC retrospectively, like looking at a deal from 10 years ago, it still provides value today and insights that you can replicate at large with your team. And then using it for hiring as well, so that as you build out the business, you're getting the right people on board that think the same way and that can ultimately become part of the way that you operate in a more efficient way by way of having the common language in place. So that is a summary for this amazing conversation. Thank you, Adam. The last question that I would have for you is tied to like that 10-year story that you told us. If there was a way for you today to give your 10-year younger version any advice, like one piece of advice for back then, what would it be?
I think it would be to really reflect and understand what was driving the success so I could scale it quicker. Because I was seeing the success, but I didn't truly know why. So if I could have seen it in a lens like MEDDIC, like the speed I could have scaled that, not only for myself, but for my peers and my team, would have been incredible. So I think truly understanding what's driving the success and the failures would be something I'd ingrain in my previous selves.
Oh, I mean, that's so good. This is actually tied to the very creation of MEDDIC, right? It's like understanding, why do we win? Why do we lose? Why do deals slip? And the good news is everybody can do this today, right? To get a proper understanding about what the mechanics are behind it. And then MEDDIC as a common language gives you the opportunity to make this scalable, to make it work for you at large. So anyone who listens to this and thinks like, hey, I want to have some guidance on how I run this and make it scalable for my team to get to a really good understanding about these, essential pillars to understanding where we win, how we replicate it, like definitely reach out and we'll make sure that you get on your way good there. Adam, thank you so much for being here with us today. I absolutely loved having you on the show. And I will say, like, if you're open to it, come back in a year to see how much impact you've been able to create with the team.
I would love that. Thanks for having me, Pim.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Okay. This was another episode of Elite Dealers. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.